and welcome to another episode of the Aga Wilson Show. Today, I have the pleasure to speak to John Bush. Welcome, John. John is a radical activist entrepreneur, and he is definitely working on some really great initiatives that we definitely want to hear more about. So, John, if you maybe could start by introducing yourself and tell us a bit about your background, who you are, so that we can get a sense of who we're talking to today.
Sure. So my name's John Bush. I live in Central Texas. I've been an activist for peace and truth and freedom for 20 years now. And in that time, I've run the whole gamut of different activist efforts, from sharing the truth about 9/11 and different false flag attacks to helping people understand that there is a conspiracy to control people and do some pretty diabolical things. And also did some political activism, learned about libertarianism after the presidential campaign of Ron Paul in 2007, 2008. And we started a political action committee, helped to push back on a lot of initiatives that would be more like expanding the police state and the surveillance state. But I really kind of grew tired of that, recognizing that we weren't creating more freedom for ourselves. In reality, we were simply slowing the growth of tyranny. So I shifted my focus towards the creation of alternative institutions and the idea that if we want to experience freedom in our lives, we have to take responsibility for creating that freedom. Since then, we started the Freedom Cell Network. It's a global network of over 33,000 people that are working together to create more freedom in their lives, become more prepared, more self-reliant. Big fan of decentralized cryptocurrencies to help people circumvent this central bank digital currency scheme that's coming into fruition. And started a company more recently called Live Free Academy, where we're helping people to exit the systems that they disagree with and build new decentralized and voluntary systems. Especially a big fan of homesteading and helping people to get out of the cities and to buy land and build community out in the country.
That's amazing. So yeah, there's a lot of things that I would really want to know more about, because some of these things I'm more or less familiar with, and some I'm less familiar with. But to start, you've started you having a big event coming up called the Greater Reset event. So can you tell us a bit more about that and what it's all about?
Sure. Well, a lot of people are familiar with the World Economic Forum's Great Reset. It's an initiative to create greater centralization, to utilize technology in order to surveil, track, trace, analyze all sorts of aspects of life. And so a lot of folks in our freedom, truth, health, freedom community are concerned with the Great Reset. But a lot of people are just sharing articles and doing videos about it. And we thought that it would be important to present an alternative to the Great Reset, which we call the Greater Reset. So essentially, they are working towards greater centralization, control, greater social engineering and manipulation, corruption. We are working towards decentralization and voluntary human relationships and transparent systems, decentralized technologies. And so what we do every year, this will be the fourth iteration. We're coming together January 18th through the 22nd. People can register and watch for free at thegreaterreset.org, thegreaterreset.org. So we're bringing together voices, activists, entrepreneurs, innovators to work together and present alternatives and solutions. This one's called the Greater Reset for Co-Creation. So we're working together to co-create a better world. The original one was called the Activation. And really what it's all about is getting people activated, inspired, and empowered so they can take control of their lives, and we can work together to create new systems that will protect us from this Great Reset, tyranny nonsense, technocracy, and also set up future generations to be able to experience freedom that we never thought possible.
So can you tell us a bit more about the different solutions that you have for a better society, a better world?
Sure. Well, chief among them is it's critical that we decentralize and localize our food sources. So all across the world, different economies are experiencing pretty heavy inflation, which is caused by manipulation by central banks. But on top of that, there's some environmental conditions like droughts that are just occurring naturally. But then perhaps most sinister is this effort by the United Nations and the World Economic Forum and other non-governmental organizations and governments to make it hard for people to produce food. And so they're using environmentalism and climate change as an excuse to crack down and make it difficult for farmers to do what they do well. Also, part of it is to put farmers out of business so they can buy up all the land and control a lot of Earth's resources. So whenever we see this type of stuff happening, a lot of people just freak out and worry about it and get overwhelmed. But we're trying to say, okay, well, we see where things are going. We should take proactive steps to avoid being caught in this system, in this scam, basically. So we spend a lot of time teaching people how to grow food, encouraging people to link up with local food producers. In fact, we just recently, just a few nights ago, held a Central Texas Freedom Cell Network meeting. There was about 60 or 70 people in attendance, and we spent a good bulk of the time together identifying local food producers, putting these local food producers on a list, and then encouraging one another to do business with these local food producers. So it's a two-part strategy, actually a three-part strategy that we encourage folks to do. One is to identify the local food producers, give them your business. Two is to build gardens on your own property, in your own backyard, even in your garage or your kitchen or your back porch if you're in an apartment or condo. And three, to make sure that you have food stored, storable food, to be maybe 3 months or more worth of storable food. So that's one of the first things I would encourage people to do, is to make sure that you're not dependent on these centralized systems, because there's been some powerful people in the past, like Henry Kissinger, for example, who actually is Klaus Schwab's mentor, his mentor. That's Klaus Schwab's the guy behind the World Economic Forum. And Henry Kissinger said we could use food as a weapon in order to control poorer countries. So we need to just be aware of how they're going to pressure people, manipulate people, socially engineer people, and we need to do what we can to not be caught in that trap by becoming more self-reliant and independent.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. And I just actually we started growing our own food here in our garden recently. And we have like some local farmers around here, and we try to buy everything from them, and then it's like directly from them to us.
Yeah.
So it's a great strategy. And the only thing you need to make sure is kind of find someone that grows organically, which is not always the case in the nearby areas. But so what about, you mentioned cryptocurrency, because there's a lot of discussions around cryptocurrency, and I'm not one of those people that knows a lot about it, but some people say it's bad, some people say it's good. So like, what would you say about it, and what is your advice on, dealing with cryptocurrency in general?
Sure. One thing I should add is, when it comes to the homesteading stuff, we actually just wrapped up a workshop about how to do more with less. So a lot of people think that they can't buy land, or they're struggling financially. It's hard for them to homestead. They don't know where to start. So we did this beginner's workshop called the Homesteading on a Budget workshop. Folks can check that out at livefree.academy/budget, livefree.academy/budget. Just want to throw that out there. But when it comes to cryptocurrency, yeah, there's a lot of misunderstandings about cryptocurrency. And a lot of people in our freedom and truth community, I've come to recognize there's a lot of people in our community that have major trust issues. And so when you kind of wake up to the fact that governments and the media and public health figures have been lying and are manipulating people, you start to lose trust in those institutions. But a lot of people lose trust in general. And in fact, it leads to some struggles within interpersonal relationships even. And so I think that at times we ought to be skeptical, but that lack of trust spreads over into other areas, and it causes people to shoot themselves in the foot, basically, to prevent themselves from learning about a technology that could greatly benefit them. Just because they have this mistrust in government and other institutions, they apply that mistrust everywhere, right? So perhaps one of the big struggles that people have with cryptocurrency is cryptocurrencies was created by a pseudonymous person or group of people, Satoshi Nakamoto, right? That's who gave the world Bitcoin, the very first cryptocurrency. So some people think it was the New World Order, it was the NSA in the United States or whatever. I don't think that's the case. When you look at the genesis of Bitcoin, you take a little deeper look, you find there's this group of people known as the cypherpunks. And so these were like internet, online computer geeks, basically, that were really into encryption, which is using algorithms, using mathematics in order to protect information, right? And this group of people, when the internet was being created in the 90s, they were very adamant about creating a sovereign money system for the internet that was outside of the reach of government. And so they were trying and testing things, and they kept running into these problems, like with the digital currency. How can we prevent people from double spending a unit of currency, right? If it's digital, you can just copy it. It's just a bunch of ones and zeros. That was one of the problems. Another problem was centralization. If we were to launch some cryptocurrency and it was a company that created it or a person, the government could then pressure that person to try and stop it or subpoena them or sue them. So Satoshi Nakamoto, I believe, is very likely one of these people, these cypherpunks, or a group of these people, and they finally figured out how to avoid double spending, how to unleash a currency for the internet that's decentralized, right? And so, yes, there are efforts now. Early on, I've been involved in cryptocurrency since like 2011, 2012. And early on, we thought that cryptocurrency is going to end all the central banks, right? Well, we underestimated the cunningness of these central banks because now they're wanting to implement their own central bank digital currency. Well, the cool thing about decentralized cryptocurrencies is that it's nearly impossible to shut down or stop. So for example, Bitcoin, the Bitcoin blockchain is basically a decentralized distributed public ledger. All throughout history, you had to trust a bank or a government in order to maintain a ledger. The ledger says who owns what, who sent what to whom, who now has this money and they have less money or whatever. We always had to trust a bank or a government in order to maintain this ledger. Well, we know we can't trust banks and governments, right? Well, now for the first time, we have this ledger and it's distributed and decentralized on over 15,000 different computers all throughout the globe in almost every single country. So every time someone sends a transaction to someone else, it gets updated on all of the computers. And if somebody tries to send a fraudulent transaction, the other computers in the system will know that that's not accurate because it's not reflected in their own database, right? And so the cool thing about this decentralized nature is it makes it impossible to shut down because there's not a company, a corporation, a group of people that you can pressure. And even if one government tries to shut it down over here, first of all, the citizenry in that government, the people in that country can still refuse, and you can hide your IP address and you can access the internet through the onion router, this way of obscuring who's connecting to the internet. But on top of that, there'll be other countries that can have it hosted as well. So because of this decentralized nature that makes it nearly impossible to control or stop me from sending money to you or you sending money from me, it's cryptocurrencies, decentralized cryptocurrencies, especially privacy coins like Monero, where all of the transactions are completely secret and obscured. It's these cryptocurrencies that are going to enable free people to continue to do business with one another, send and receive money online, even as they roll out this central bank digital currency scheme. Of course, the central bank digital currency is an effort by central banks to create a digital currency that's trackable, traceable, and they can even shut down your ability to purchase certain goods and services or shut you out altogether. So I believe people are doing themselves a great disservice to believe a lot of the misinformation out there about cryptocurrency, to falsely believe it's the mark of the beast or the New World Order money system, because it's cryptocurrency, decentralized privacy cryptocurrencies especially, that are going to enable us to continue to do business with one another online. So I would encourage people to give it another look, to check out different sources. I put together a free webinar for folks where I talk about this for 4 hours straight, and people can check that out at buildwealthoptout.com, buildwealthoptout.com, and I overcome a lot of these objections and help make things a little more clear about how cryptocurrency works and why it's such a valuable tool. I know that was a mouthful, but
no, that's fine. But so, because I'm always wondering, if it's online and if it's not physical, a lot of people talk about, buying gold, buying silver, because it's going to be something physical that, no one can just erase from you or your computer or anything else. What do you think in terms of that type of security? Is it better to own gold or is it better to own cryptocurrency?
Well, they're not mutually exclusive. You can do both. And I like gold and silver, and I like barter networks and trading amongst ourselves. But the thing is, you can't send gold over the mail. It can get confiscated. Not to mention, gold has been confiscated in the past. And in fact, in this country in 1933, there was an executive order signed where they went and took everybody's gold. And then the country was taken off the gold standard several decades later. So the thing about gold is, if the government says we need to collect all your gold, and we know that you bought gold here or there or whatever, or we have suspicion you have gold, they can break into your house, crack open your safe, and take your gold. With cryptocurrency, if you remember the encryption keys, the private keys, nobody can take that money ever. They can get you in front of a judge and say, if you don't tell us your encryption password, then we're going to put you in a cage. But nonetheless, they can't force you to do so, or you at least have that choice. And then again, that's why I like to differentiate. That's why I make it very clear that cryptocurrency is going to be the tool for us to use to do business online. Yeah. And it's a misunderstanding that they can just erase your crypto because it's on the computer. If you back up your wallets correctly, if you have your wallets encrypted, then it's next to impossible for someone to come in and hack that or take that. There's been instances in the past where people didn't do it properly and they have lost money, or governments have taken the money. But if you do it properly, like we teach at Live Free Academy, then it's next to impossible for people to take your money. So let us create in-person barter networks. Let's trade with one another. Let's keep track of, this guy sent this guy borrowed that, this guy did this service, so we owe him this, or they owe us that, or whatever, in person. But let's not lose sight of the role that cryptocurrency has to play for us to send money over the internet, in spite of them trying to control the money that gets sent on the internet through central bank digital currencies.
Thank you. No, that's really valuable information, because I think a lot of people are, that's a question that comes up pretty often. Also, you mentioned getting out of the cities, which is exactly what I have done in the past 2 years. But why is that so important?
Well, there's a number of reasons. First and foremost, the traditional type of tyranny, the police state, surveillance cameras, smog and traffic, just the quality of life is very much more present in the city than out in the country, where you have more space. People tend to be friendlier. There's more land to grow your own food. It's a little slower pace. It's just a lifestyle thing. But what's really important is this whole Great Reset agenda is going to be most predominant in the big cities. That's where they're going to shift over to this smart city agenda, where they have 5G technology, where the internet speeds are lightning fast. And the reason why they want these lightning fast internets is because they're going to be able to send and receive mass amounts of data. There's the Internet of Things, which is interlinking all of the different appliances and technologies and traffic lights and smog detectors and carbon detectors and the trash that you put out and the food that you have in your refrigerator. And then there's even the Internet of Bodies that wants to connect all of the human beings to this smart grid, this interconnected computer system. So imagine having a phone in your pocket or a tracking ID on your car, and every time you drive past a street lamp, it pings that you're in this area. Or imagine your household is only allotted a certain amount of carbon output for the month. And if you exceed that carbon output, you lose social credit score points, or now all of a sudden you can't use your private automobile, you have to take public transportation, or you can't leave the city to go on a vacation unless it's necessary or whatever. This is not just speculation or conspiracy theory. This is written about in their white papers, and they're very public and transparent about it. So for people that are concerned about that agenda, for people that value their privacy and their sovereignty, I believe that it's much easier for us to live as free people out in the country. And the vision that we have, that we laid out at this big event that we did recently, the Exit and Build Land Summit, people can watch the replay for free at exitandbuildlandsummit.com, exitandbuildlandsummit.com. We brought together all these incredible speakers. We brought together 450 people in person, thousands of people watching online. And the whole message was, if you care about freedom and privacy, bodily autonomy, let's get out of the cities let's buy land, let's build homesteads, let's buy land cooperatively and build intentional communities, and let's start providing for one another, supporting one another, trading amongst one another. This guy's got the tractor, we got the chickens, they have the vegetables. This family hosts the homeschool co-op where all the kids get together on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and they're raised together and taught together. And so I really think there's a lot of opportunity for us to get outside of their control mechanisms and to build our own systems, our own economies, our own parallel structures, and hopefully create real freedom for ourselves. The COVID stuff really revealed it all, right? Like, I used to drive to meet my kids. Me and my wife share custody, and she was 3 hours away. And I lived in the city of Austin. I don't now. We have a 10-acre homestead on the outside of town. But you're in the city of Austin, everybody's wearing masks. Everybody's all weird about coming in and out of the store without a mask, and everyone's staying away from one another. It's just weird, everyone all masked up and all paranoid. But you just drive a little bit further out of town, and all of a sudden, the further you get from the big city, there's fewer and fewer masks. So it was already a problem, but now it's even more of a big difference between the city and the country post-COVID, and it's going to be even more prevalent and more obvious as the smart city agenda comes to pass.
Yeah, very true. And I think, there's a lot of communities being built everywhere in the world. I know here in Sweden, there's several people doing that. So it's going to be interesting to see. But do you think we're going to be safe there? You don't think they're going to interfere? Is it going to be harder for them to control these communities and people outside of the cities?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that we're totally safe and we're just going to be left alone, but it's most definitely the case that it's going to be easier to be left alone. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that I call them carry can'ts, because a lot of times when you share ideas like, hey, what if we use this cryptocurrency to help do business with one another, even if the government tries to say we can't, or we have to be vaccinated to do this or that. And people are like, well, we can't do that because the government will shut it down, or we can't do that because the internet can be turned off, or we can't do that because they'll make it illegal. Just the same with land. We're like, hey, we should buy land and homestead and build communities out in the country. And they say, we can't do that because they'll just take our land. Or Klaus Schwab said, we'll own nothing and be happy. I call those people carry can'ts. So the alternative is like, okay, well then what do people propose? Staying in the city, not learning to use cryptocurrency, and not being able to send money online unless the government approves what they're doing. So we got to do something, and we're never going to live in a world without risk, but we can take proactive measures to create a better environment and a better life for ourselves, where it's more likely that freedom can flourish.
Yes, agreed. We will speak it into existence. I think
that's right.
Sounds much better than
that's what we're doing right now.
Exactly. So yeah, I totally agree with you, because I truly believe that you create your reality by your thoughts and your thinking, and if they're negative, of course it's not going to be a happy outcome. Mm-hmm. So for sure. And also you're involved, or you started an initiative called Exit and Build Strategy. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. So the Exit and Build Strategy was actually the concept. Exit and Build was first communicated by my good friend and associate Derek Brose in this book that he wrote, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State. He actually wrote it just before COVID was unleashed onto the world, and he's doing an updated version because he talked about all this stuff, and then it's like, wow, this is really happening now. We were kind of speculating on it in the book, but yeah, the concept really appealed to me, so I took it and kind of used it. He was really talking about exiting where you are and building elsewhere, or hunkering down where you are, right? But I took it and expanded upon it, so it's like, let's identify systems, corporations, organizations, ways of life, habits that aren't serving us, that we find to be unethical, that we find to be manipulated, controlled, over-centralized, coerced, where you're forced into it. Let's identify those systems and let's exit them and build the alternatives. So it's exit government schools and build homeschool co-ops and private schools. Exit a dependency on the pharmaceutical medical complex and become healthier, exercise, avoid stress, take natural remedies and plant medicine. Exit the banks and use cryptocurrency or local currencies or gold and silver. Exit the cities and build community in the country, right? So this is an overall strategy. A lot of people ask, what can we do about all these problems? Should we run for office? Should we protest? Should we show up and park our trucks in front of the Parliament building? Should we yell at government buildings? Everybody loves to yell at government buildings for some reason, like it's going to change things. It doesn't change anything at all, and you end up just getting cracked down upon. So we say, what are we going to do about it? We're going to exit and we're going to build. But on the flip side, a lot of people are like, when we say exit, we mean opt out. We mean like withdraw consent, decouple, just abandon ship, right? But a lot of people are like, well, I have a house, I have kids in school, I have investments, I've been working for the past 30 years in this career, and we have a 401k and investment accounts. So that sounds a little bit risky for me. Well, that's why we flip it around and we say, let's build all these systems, let's build the networks, let's build the connections, let's build the trade routes, let's build the relationships and the business relationships, and let's build the systems of communication and the currencies. Let's build this stuff so we can clear the way for us to exit. So it's exit and build, and it's also build so we may exit. And that's really what it's all about.
So how does it work? I mean, how long has this project been going on for, and how does it work? Has it worked well, with people actually leaving their old lives in the end, or you're not like there yet in the process?
Well, so more than like a project, it's just like it's a strategy. It answers the question, how do we get from here to there? How do we get from tyranny and technocracy to a functioning free society where we support one another and we live the good life? So, I mean, that strategy has been employed for years and decades and maybe even centuries. It's the eternal struggle between good and evil, between tyranny and freedom. But more recently, we've been trying to really just hammer it home because a lot of people are lost and they don't know what to do. They know there's a problem and they get so overwhelmed studying this conspiracy that they're like, oh my God, they get right? It's red pilled is when you wake up, but then you get black pilled when you just get overwhelmed and you become apathetic. But with our Freedom Cell network, so we have this network of over 33,000 people. Anyone can join us. And in fact, there's active groups in Sweden and in Europe and in general. You can sign up at freedomcells.org, like cells in the body. But we all work together and employ this exit and build strategy. And one thing I would say is like, there's some people that have already exited and they're like, I'm waiting on you guys. Why are you guys still paying taxes? What's going on here? So I like to look at things in terms of a spectrum. So on the one hand, we have total exit, total freedom, true sovereignty, not paying taxes, no banks, no Gmail, no Google searches. They're outside the system. And on the other hand, you have like Debbie Do-Gooder that's wearing the mask still and lining up for all the boosters, right? So most people in our community find themselves somewhere around here. So the idea is take stock of where you're at. So maybe I know how to use cryptocurrency well, and I've already traded with cryptocurrency and I feel good about that. But I get all of my food from the grocery store and I'm on some high blood pressure medication and some other pharmaceuticals. And I have never used an encrypted text messaging app like Signal. And I have, all I have is Gmail. So you become aware of that. And then you say, what can I do in order to move closer towards the total exit, towards the total freedom? So you come up with a plan. So you're like, okay, well, I think it'd be simple and it's not illegal or risky for me to set up a Proton Mail account and then to download Signal on my phone and start using that when I talk to my fellow freedom people. Okay, the high blood pressure medicine, my doctor says I need it, but I know there's other people that haven't used high blood pressure medicine. So I'm gonna start researching what I can do in order to change my lifestyle perhaps. Okay, but I'm gonna be slow with that because I don't wanna just stop taking something I've been taking for the past 5 years. Okay, and the grocery store, that's a really important one. All right, so I'm going to get together with my significant other and we're going to come up with a plan on how we can start growing our own food. So we're going to buy some books, we're going to watch some videos, we're going to take John Bush's Homesteading on a Budget workshop course, and we're going to learn what we can do. And we're slowly but surely going to start moving closer towards freedom. And the idea is us leaders in the community are like, come join us. We see what's going on and we have a lifeboat. We have a Noah's Ark to get the heck out of this technocracy. So the idea is once more and more and more people are on board, it makes it easier to transition, and hopefully one day we all completely exit. So, but to answer your question more specifically, there's tons of people that have become more self-sufficient with their food. There's tons of people we've helped leave the city. Through the Freedom Cell Network, we're always meeting people that felt alone and isolated during all the lockdowns, and they learned that there were other people in their area. They pulled their kids out of government school. Now they do a homeschool co-op. So there's tons of stories of people's lives dramatically changing. But I just want to encourage people to just come up with a plan and slowly but surely, or maybe quickly if you got the stomach for it, work your way towards greater freedom. It doesn't have to be a snap of the finger thing. In fact, it's really impossible to just expect that you can do it overnight, but at least have a plan, a strategy, and some goals with targets and dates as deadlines, and start working your way towards a life of greater independence.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I just visited New York, and my friend set up a beautiful homeschooling pod in her house. So I got to visit that with my son, which was amazing. Unfortunately, in Sweden, homeschooling is illegal. So we don't have, yeah, it's really crazy. So we don't have much options, which is also pretty tough for anyone from our community. But we're trying to figure that one out. So if I ask you, like, how far are you yourself in the process, would you say, with stepping out of the matrix?
Sure. Okay, so I've been at it for a while, but I still have my foot. I like to do what's called the inside-outside game. So I'm a businessman, I'm an entrepreneur, and I have aspirations and goals that have to do with money. And like, for example, we want to build, we're actually building a giant intentional community eco-village on 188 acres. That's going to take money and effort. And I want to purchase a big plot of land so we can build this world-class event center, and we can have homeschool co-ops there and spaces for people to use commercial kitchens and co-working space, all this stuff. So I operate multiple businesses. So I still pay my income tax, for example, but I'm a fan of the inside outside game. So you have this stuff here that's above board, but then you got this stuff here that's kind of underground, right? So I have encrypted email, but I also have Gmail, and I use Google, but I try to use the alternatives, but sometimes Google just returns better searches, to be honest. I learned how to use cryptocurrency. I know how to use cryptocurrency confidently. I'm very pleased at where I'm at when it comes to my homestead. We have a 10-acre homestead. We have 2 community members living there, in addition to my fiance and I and the 2 kiddos. We have a chicken coop that's just about completed. We're going to have a couple dozen chickens here in no time. We just yesterday planted a bunch of seeds and a bunch of sprouts in the ground. We're creating these wicking bed gardens where you have these reservoirs at the bottom of a big garden. It's like in a big tub. You have a reservoir for the water, and then you have a garden cloth, and you have the soil, and then you have a PVC pipe that goes down into the reservoir. So you don't have to water the soil, you just water down into the reservoir, and the roots of the plants wick the water up into the soil. So it's really good for Texas where it's really dry. We have a bunch of food storage too. So, I don't beat myself up over the areas where I'm lacking and where I need to improve. I just know, like, all right, the time's going to come. I have a plan in place. And the idea is to move closer towards greater freedom without putting yourself at risk so much. However, that being said, every once in a while, we do have to put a little skin in the game and take some risks, because we can never have a life without risk. And if we don't take risks towards greater freedom, we're going to find ourselves in a situation where we no longer have a choice. We're just totally enslaved. And if we resist, they'll shut us down. So it's crunch time right now, because the technology does exist to create a situation where these oligarchs and these tyrants and these technocrats can essentially stop the cycle of revolutions and evolution for human liberty, and like control everybody with Chinese style communism, technocratic communism all across the globe. So I'm on my journey, and I'm trying to do my best to lead by example and help people on their journey.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with you. I'm like in between too, and it's hard sometimes, but it's like baby steps. Sometimes it's huge steps and risks, and sometimes it's little baby steps. So I think we're all going to get there, eventually. So what do you see? What's like your best outcome for the future, and just to inspire people, because it is pretty scary times at times, you know, or maybe not scary, but challenging for many of us. The world has changed, you know, completely, and everything is upside down. So what would you tell viewers, you know, just in general, and what does your ideal future look like?
Okay, so I think something practical is I've always been optimistic, and I believe that we are going to experience freedom and liberty, if not in our lifetime. Well, you know, like you said, it's about a mindset. Even though there's all this crazy stuff going on in the world, I've never felt more free personally. My financial game's in good order. I have healthy relationships with my fiance and my kids. I eat well. I could exercise more. I'm always so busy, but I need to make that a priority. But like, I feel free. The government's not on my back. I mean, I pay for this and have a driver's license, and it's an annoyance and a pain in the butt. But for the most part, I do whatever I want to do every day. I'm in control of my life, and I've been conscious to create, to architect a life like that. So for people that feel like they're in this victim space, or their life is just not fulfilling, I would encourage people to be conscious of how they can change that and how they can create a life that's more in alignment with their purpose on earth. But overall, as far as like how civilization goes, there's actually this essay, this article written by a woman that's a World Economic Forum contributor. Her name's Ida Auken. A lot of people are familiar with it. The World Economic Forum took it off of their website. But the title is "Welcome to 2030. I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better." And it's this total propaganda article about how life is great. We don't own our home. We just rent a space. And when we're not in the home, other people use it. We don't have cars. We don't own anything. We don't pay for groceries, blah, blah, blah. And there's this part in the article that I think is really telling. And so this is what I foresee for the future. I agree with the article for this part. This is, again, from an article that a contributor to the World Economic Forum. This is the World Economic Forum's opinion and views. It says, "My biggest concern is all the people who do not live in our city, those we lost on the way, those who decided that it became too much, all this technology, those who felt obsolete and useless when robots and AI took over big parts of our jobs, those who got upset with the political system and turned against it. They live different kinds of lives outside of the city. Some have formed little self-supplying communities. Others just stayed in the empty and abandoned houses in small 19th century villages." So that's kind of what I see happening. Like I feel as though the Great Reset and this effort to usher in the smart cities and this fourth industrial revolution, which they call the Great Reset, that's the merging of biology and technology and the track and trace of all biodiversity on Earth. I feel that agenda will most likely be successful, and they will roll that out for most people on the planet. But that doesn't mean that it has to apply to us. And we, the free people of this world, it's up to each and every one of us to take responsibility for creating and carving out a life of freedom for ourselves, our children, and for the future generations to come. So that's one of the big reasons why I think it's important that we get outside the city and we start forming these self-supplying communities. When I read that, I think like, oh, that actually sounds pretty good. That's what we're doing. You know, that's not some terrible thing to avoid. That's what we need to do. So I think that unless there's like some mass conservative movement, right? Like I'm not a big Donald Trump guy, but I did take note of this conservative right-wing populist uprising. It also happened with Brexit, right? And all these populist right-wing type people. I don't like the whole right-wing, left-wing thing, but there's nationalists that are opposing the globalist thing. I'm not a nationalist or a globalist. I'm an individualist that likes people and community. But even the whole Q thing, which I think was a psychological operation, it like got a lot of people thinking about conspiracy theories and recognizing that there's people that are controlling the earth and there's like weird pedophile elite stuff going on. So absent some mass movement that's like a big conservative thing, not our movement, which is a little more obscure. There's tons of us out there, don't get me wrong, but there's not a whole lot. It's not a mass movement per se. Absent some mass conservative movement in the West, I think the Great Reset will be successful. And the question we need to ask ourselves is, how do we insulate ourselves from it? And how can we provide an alternative to it. And so the hope is we do our thing outside the city, and it's not weird, small 19th century villages and abandoned houses. It's like we have our own futuristic cities. It's built on permaculture principles. It's in alignment with the earth. We honor the earth and respect the earth. We're not polluting and destroying the environment, but we're also not putting the environment above us and subjugating ourselves to it like these environmentalists want to do. And we can show, and we're also free and voluntary, and we have innovative economies that aren't manipulated by the taxation scheme and all these regulations. So maybe we create some financial abundance. And the hope is for general, like big term success, big picture success, is that the masses see what we're doing and they're like, I don't like owning nothing. I like to drive around in my convertible with my hair in the wind, and I like to go visit my grandparents in the neighboring city whenever I want without having to get permission. I don't like every single bit of my life being tracked and traced and surveilled, and people being able to lower my credit score because I said something weird or whatever. Maybe they see what we're doing outside the city and they're like, I want to go join them. And then there's a shift because we have a better way of life. I don't know exactly, but I know that I'm not going to lay down and just go along to get along. I'm going to do everything I can to create a better world in the present moment and hope that it lasts for generations to come.
Thank you. Yeah, it's wonderful to see that so many people out there are, doing something to change the world. And I always wonder if Klaus Schwab is actually ready to give up his wealth to and own nothing.
Yeah, right.
We'll see about that. That is to come. But anyways, thank you so much, John, for coming on. I wanted we're going to put up all your websites, in the article with the video and everything so people can find you. Anything else that you want to share as a last word?
Yeah, I would just encourage people to get out of their heads. Everybody just overthinks things and they're like, should I do this? Should I do that? And then they just get caught in this mind trap and they have doubts. And I think what's most important above all else is action. We got to take action. We got to start moving the ball down the field towards greater freedom, prosperity, and abundance. And it's up to each and every one of us to take more action towards that in our own lives, but not just do it in our own little sphere, in our own mind. Let's share with others these strategies and these ways of life, because the future generations are dependent on us. So it's fundamentally critical that we all take greater action and create more freedom for ourselves.
Yes. And having kids, as we do, we both know that that's like what we want to leave. We don't want to leave behind the crazy world for them. We want them to be happy.
That's right.
So I'm with you there. Thank you, John, so much. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and for everything that you do. And hope we can talk again at some point.
Thank you so much for having me.